Check. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to another episode of The Rabbit Hole. I have to say to you, in preparing to introduce our next guest, I ended up in the rabbit hole, going down the rabbit hole and the other rabbit hole over what he has to share with us today. Be prepared to have your mind blown. Dr. Bryan Ardis lost his father-in-law in February of 2020 because of an ill-advised, toxic, and deadly hospital protocol. Since then, he has been on a relentless mission to warn the public about the hidden dangers lurking inside of our institutes of health. That includes hospitals, medical clinics, and all of our government agencies. In May of 2020, Dr. Ardis blew the whistle on the deadly, toxic, and experimental drug remdesivir. I can hardly say it. Remdesivir. It sounds evil. Remdesivir, whatever. It's toxic. Dr. Ardis has been featured in many documentaries, including Antidote with Jason Shurka, Watch the Water, and Watch the Water 2 with Stu Peters, Co-Venom with 19 with Jonathan Otto, and Propaganda Exposed with the Bollingers, and many others. The Dr. Ardis Show has a mission statement, which is creating doubt in big pharma and restoring faith in nature. During the intentionally created supply chain issues of the fraudulent COVID pandemic, Dr. Ardis launched his own brand of natural supplements called artislabs.com. Whether by media interviews, speaking on stages, or testifying in state capitol buildings, Dr. Ardis is on a mission to protect the health of innocent human beings worldwide and help them make sense of their symptoms. Please help me welcome Dr. Bryan Ardis. What an honor. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, so those in the back, y'all might want to scoot up, actually. Come on up here. I'm used to rooms with like thousands of people. Y'all might as well get up closer. And the reason why I say that is because these screens are small, smaller than I'm used to, and there's a lot of info on these screens that I'm going to point to or reference, and I would like you to see it. So you might want to come up. All right, so I'm Dr. Ardis. It's great to be here. Thanks for joining us. I'm very excited. I hope you guys are excited. Now I want you to take this info that I'm about to lay out for you, and just so you know, at the very end, even if I don't have time to get through this entire presentation, at the very end, I'm going to put up a QR code that will direct you to the page where the free PowerPoint is just sitting there, and you can download the whole thing, because there will be antidotes of multiple kinds. There will be multiple recommendations and dosages of when, and if you should have the reference and know where to go get it. And if y'all are aware of what I've been doing for the last 4 years in relationship to COVID, everything was about directing people around the world to a place where they could get documents, free documents, to help them either navigate the hospitals, avoid getting hurt with remdesivir, being vented to death, being vaccinated. I had attorneys helping write documents that we were sending out to people all over the world. So my goal, there are some people that talk, and then there's some people that like to show and tell. I'm a show and tell guy. So I will never make a claim or a statement where I can't show you to find the reference or the study. And if it doesn't make common sense to me as I've dove into it, I would never tell you unless I'm absolutely certain of what I see. And just so you know, I don't know if you guys were this is a very different and unique feeling atmosphere than most medical conferences I've been to. So when I say this in this room, it might make sense, but I get impressions all the time of what to go research, and I know nothing about it. Then I just go look it up, and oh my God, the rabbit hole starts. And I believe God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, continues to direct me to help as many people around the world as possible navigate very deceptive medical health waters. Got it? I try. Not everybody who loves science loves consciousness. So ridiculous. All right, so I called this, how many of you watched the Antidote documentary? This is not going to be the Antidote documentary. I'm not reviewing everything you saw there. However, there's going to be highlights from that presentation in here. And I've been very impressed to watch many medical professionals around the world who wanted to turn their back and actually tell people not to watch me or listen to anything I said once I brought up the venom aspect of COVID. A whole bunch of medical professionals wanted me to, either be removed from events. They told you I was ridiculous and I shouldn't be listened to. I already said I am a show first tell guy. I'm not going to just tell you something unless there's evidence to back it up. So let me show you some evidence. You ready? All right, so I have been called the remdesivir guy worldwide. I've been called the snake venom guy worldwide. Now, I've told people ever since that was said, I can't wait to be called the nicotine guy. Like, for the rest of my life, I can't wait. Now, you have to understand, I was raised in a Mormon church, indoctrinated my entire life. My parents are multi-generational Mormons. Mormons don't smoke and they don't like tobacco, and they've been taught their whole life to avoid it. So when I do this presentation, you have to understand, I come from a long line of people that don't trust this stuff, and my entire reality has been shifted. And it's been awesome to watch. You know how uncomfortable notice I call this the other N-word. The reason why I said that is because there's a taboo N-word that makes a lot of people in society feel uncomfortable. Well, there's a second one I've learned in the last 2 years that makes the whole society and medicine very nervous. Well, we're going to destroy that reality for you today. You okay with that? Have you ever thought you were lied to? Okay, ever? Even by the medical profession or the government or healthcare authorities? You've been lied to? Give me an example of a lie you've been told that you actually figured out was a lie. Masks work, safe and effective. Yeah, what else? Okay, you got to understand. This dude just said asymptomatic transmission. That has been the most dumb thing I've ever heard for the last 4 years. Like, of all of them, I'm like, remdesivir being deadly and toxic and Fauci talking about it, that's not as weird to me as this. Asymptomatic spread. All of us have been conditioned since we're very young to wash your hands, and if you sneeze, don't sneeze into your hands, sneeze into your elbow, because you might, with your symptom, spray your infection on somebody else. How do you, if you don't have symptoms, how are you spreading it? You're either coughing, pooping, sweating, to pass your germs to the next person. Since when are non-sick people making other people sick? It's just illogical. It's so weird. My favorite thing also, y'all know Dr. Lee Merritt? It was amazing to watch the presentation like 4 years ago. To be honest with you, I didn't want to talk to a single MD after they killed my father-in-law. I didn't want anybody trusting them ever again. I definitely wasn't. I didn't want anybody talking to them. If I didn't hear Lee Merritt 4 years ago do a presentation on masks as simply as she did as a surgeon, I was like, oh, you got to put me in touch with that lady. She was my very first MD interview while I was out just doing all my remdesivir interviews, because she was speaking in common sense, and it was miraculous to hear a surgeon go, you know what, in med school, we're taught that these masks don't stop you from transmitting infections. It's just there to capture sputum while you're working on somebody. You don't cough or sneeze into their wound. It was great. I don't have that perspective. I'm not a surgeon. It was amazing. Holy crap, here's common sense. The lady knows. These don't work to protect you from infections. Loved it. All right, so the other N word. If I do not get through this entire presentation, I promise you the whole thing's available to you. Okay, so don't worry. All right, Mark Twain said it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Remember, please, if you're going to take a picture of the slides, lots of people like to try to do that, just know the whole document is free. Just don't worry about it. Just enjoy. Because I want to flip through some of these quick. Typically, a 1 hour presentation for me is like 80 slides. I have 353 in this one. And this is a brand new presentation. No one's ever seen it. My wife couldn't believe how much time I spent all week preparing this. Now, it was fun for me because it's my thought processes. And to me, I try to use common sense with everything. So as I linearly think about things, if there's a hiccup or it doesn't make sense, I have to go research it, then answer that question, then move on to the next one. And if I can't find the answer, then I stay there until I do, or then I let it go. Okay. This is April 14th, 1994. CEOs of 7 major tobacco corporations in the United States swear under oath to Congress that nicotine is not addictive. This is what they say. It is not addictive. This is directly out of the University of California, San Francisco. I found a link to the actual statement. Let's see if it's got sound. I hope I don't hear anything.
We just would like to have this for the record.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
All 7 corporate heads of the major 7 tobacco giants, all in unison in 1994, are called in by our Congress to answer just one question under oath. Is nicotine addictive? And all of them under oath, as the senator from Oregon said, you're under oath. They're here to testify to nicotine being addictive or not. All of them said it's not addictive. Now, if I was the head of a company selling something that was addictive, I could feel the temptation to want to lie so that you buy my product. These people are under oath in front of Congress. I don't know if they're being honest or not, but the FDA, 3 months later, I don't know if y'all saw this. This is in April of 1994. You see the bottom left there? This is 3 months later, the FDA says nicotine's addictive. You'll see the date, August 1994. All right, warning. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Anybody know who this is? Anybody tell me who that is? Anybody tell me who that is? It's the same guy. Goebbels. Very good. That guy. There you go. That guy. That guy. All right, that guy had this to say, okay? I want to read this to you. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such a time as the state, the government, can shield the people from the political, economic, and or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state, the government, to use all of its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie. And thus, by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. Propaganda machine for the Nazi war criminals. So we're going to focus on the first part of his statement. He was the propaganda minister, as mentioned back here, for the entire Nazi regime under Hitler. And he was telling Hitler and all the group, we just have to lie to the people, a big enough lie, and keep repeating it. People will eventually come to believe it. All right, so let me give you an example of a time in which you heard something repeated over and over and over and over and over, and you've never forgotten it. Ready? An apple a day does what? Oh my God, how do you guys know that? Do you know how many times that was repeated to you over and over and over? Right? This is an example. You say it loud enough, long enough, I'm not saying that's a lie, I'm just saying you can say anything. You say it and repeat it over and over and over, you're going to remember. All right, so I'm going to focus on this. Tell a lie big enough. I love that, big enough. And keep repeating it. People will eventually come to believe it. Well, we're going to talk about this. This is the statement from the state. Warning, this product contains nicotine, and nicotine is an addictive chemical. All right, so I'm going to give you some examples of how the state is making sure you know that. Billboards, read the sign. Nicotine is addictive. FDA, warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Juul things, these little liquid nicotines. Nicotine's an addictive chemical. These are little suck-it packs. Warning, nicotine's an addictive chemical. Whatever that is, liquid pear candy, cotton candy. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine's an addictive chemical. Here's another one. Warning, nicotine is highly addictive. Health Canada. Okay, rocking. Even Superman said, nicotine, never say yes to a cigarette. All right, remember, if you tell it loud enough, big enough, and keep repeating it, let's find out every year since 1994 what has been repeated for every single year since 1994. Ready? I'm going to go 1994 to now. Ready? So just watch. I have red lines under the 2 words published in every research paper, magazine, you name it. And the date, So you'll see up in the top right-hand corner, 1994 is the date. British Medical Journal, 1994. Nicotine's addictive. The U.S. took a step closer to regulating cigarettes last week when an advisory panel of the FDA said that nicotine is addictive. Not the owners or the CEOs of the tobacco industry. The FDA said that nicotine is addictive. You know what else the FDA said the last 3 years? COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective. Was that true? Did the FDA lie to you? Over and over and over. How do you know when they're lying and when they're telling the truth? No, I mean, how do you really know? And I'm serious, like, how do we really know? You don't know, unless you go do the research, right? All right, so we're going to find out if they're lying about this one. I have no idea. We'll find out in a minute. All right, so APA PsychNet, 1995, nicotine is addictive. Evidence of nicotine's addictiveness resides in this is why they said it's addictive. Evidence of nicotine's addictiveness resides in the tenacity of the smoking habit. 80% of people who initially quit smoking relapse by the end of a year. How many things can you think of that are addictive that you don't touch it for a year? I don't know. Many people are like, man, I stopped heroin yesterday. I was almost over it, and a year later, I did it again. Really? Okay. New scientist. Tobacco giant knew nicotine was addictive, 1996. All right, this is medical journals. The Journal of Pediatrics, did you know this? 1997. Nicotine addiction is a pediatric disease. Wow. Had no idea that so many pediatric patients were addicted to nicotine. What are their parents giving them? Weird. 1998, Nature Medicine, nicotine addiction and the lure of a reward. PubMed, NIH, tobacco use as a drug addiction, the Scientific Foundation, 1999. Let's go a little bit further. Now, I did this on purpose because I wanted to show you the words nicotine and addiction together over and over and over. But I like this article because it says tobacco use is a drug addiction. So in the very first paragraph, you read, nicotine is an addictive drug. I worried it would only talk about tobacco. I wanted to see the word nicotine, okay? All right, ABC News reports in the year 2000, nicotine addiction can be immediate. Wow. Pharmacology, Biochemistry, and Behavior, December 2001, nicotine addiction, cellular mechanisms of it. Now the dental industry is going to start talking about it in 2002, managing nicotine addiction, because every dentist is worried about that when you're in their chair. As he looks in there, hey, you got a cavity. By the way, are you addicted to nicotine? Just curious. Just read an article in 2002. All right, this is 2003, Science News. Nicotine use, early nicotine use may lead to lasting addiction. This is CBS News, 2004. Nicotine addiction, molecule-eyed. Well, I didn't know there was another molecule in nicotine, but maybe. 2004. Yale now says something. Research explores nicotine addiction in 2005. University of California, San Francisco. Smokers invited to test vaccine against nicotine addiction. How many of you knew there was a vaccine for that? Did you know? I wonder if they have one for other addictions like gambling addiction, porn addictions, pedophilia addictions. They got those? I haven't seen those yet. The New York Times, 2007, nicotine addiction is quick in use. I actually like this, so I'm going to show you. A young cigarette smoker can begin to feel powerful desires for nicotine within 2 days of first inhaling, a new study has found. Wow. The American Journal of Psychiatry, nicotine addiction, 2008. In NBC News, check out this title, Jury, nicotine addiction caused smoker's death. Wow. 2010, nicotine addiction, Journal of Social Issues, 2010. 2011, NPR, National Public Radio, Addiction Inc., big tobacco keeping us hooked. Eureka Alert, new vaccine for nicotine addiction. Cornell University had a new vaccine for nicotine addiction. It's amazing. I had no idea. There's a vaccine for everything. All right, Nature Magazine, 2013. Nicotine exposure gives baby rats addictive personalities. What does that look like in a rat, do you think? Man, that rat wanted to get out of that maze so fast you could tell he wanted to gamble. Results suggest explanation for why people exposed to nicotine in the womb are more likely to become smokers. Okay, really? Do you remember the old drug commercials we watched in the 80s and 90s? I'm not joking. I was a little kid then. Do you remember these where the mom or dad would walk through the door and there'd be little Johnny in the corner snorting something, smoking something? And the parents would go, "Where did you learn to do that?" And what was the kid's reply back to the mom or dad? "I learned it by watching you." Do our children learn by our behaviors? Do you think they watch us? Yes. You really think it's because you did something while you're in the womb? All right, Virginia Tech announces in 2014 vaccination for nicotine addiction being developed with the National Institutes of Health grant. Wow. 2015, Business Insider, the way nicotine interacts with our brains to get us hooked is terrifying. AAP News, perfect storm can spur nicotine addiction and use. 2016, 2017, FDA aims to lower nicotine in cigarettes to get smokers to quit. This is the FDA in 2018 now takes the stand. They're going to require specific labeling about nicotine on tobacco products. I want to show you what they said. All right. Now, just so y'all know, in case y'all are wondering if I made this crap up, there's a URL link down here that takes you to every single damn thing I'm showing you. And anybody who says don't listen to me, shame on them. Cigarette tobacco must display the warning on the two principal display panels. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Roll your own tobacco. All of you thought that might be better. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Cigars. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Anybody ever wonder how George Burns lived so long? All right. The official website of the state of North Carolina, Thursday, 2019, April. Teens at risk of addiction to nicotine. Now, Penn State Health in 2020. Light smokers may not escape nicotine addiction, study reveals. Harvard gets into the action 2021. Nicotine addiction explained and how medications can help. Oh, there's not a vaccine for that. There's definitely a drug for that. All right, School of Public Health, BU. I'm going to guess that's Boston University. I don't really know what it is. It's not the right colors, but we worry about kids developing lifelong addiction to nicotine. September 2022. I only did that because I couldn't see the date. I wanted y'all to see it. I'm a show and tell guy. All right, The Guardian, 2023. Children so addicted to nicotine they sleep with vapes under pillow. Australia hearing told. After repeating to the world for almost 20 years nicotine is addictive, did the FDA change its mind in 2022? Let's see. Okay, they didn't. Nicotine is why tobacco products are addictive. Is there any question about what makes tobacco products addictive off of that statement? Everybody confident it's definitely nicotine? So I ask you, is nicotine addictive? Remember what Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. I'm actually this guy with you right now. I'm trying to convince you that you've been fooled. It's going to take a lot of work, though. It's going to take 353 slides to be exact. Now, I find this ironic with this quote. I did not see it when I first started building this presentation. Is that ironic to you? I thought that was funny. I was like, oh, he's actually holding a cigarette. How funny is that? All right. So I posed the question, is nicotine addictive? Well, this doctor in 2002 at Wake Forest Baptist decided to ask that question too. Is nicotine addictive? Well, let's see what he wrote. Since the 1988 report of the Surgeon General, the statements that nicotine is as addictive as heroin and cocaine, that cigarettes are efficient nicotine devices delivering hits to the brain within seconds, have become truisms like the statement that water is wet. These statements have largely gone unchallenged. Frank argues, quote, a critical evaluation of the evidence that the Surgeon General mustered for his conclusions and the evidence that has been accumulating since shows that this evidence is extremely weak and certainly not compelling. In fact, many better controlled studies show that nicotine is aversive both to animals and humans and limits cigarette smoking rather than maintains it. Well, I thought that was interesting. All right, so then in 2015, this article comes out from Medical Daily. Well, it's on Medical Daily. Nicotine alone does not lead to addiction. Additives found in both light cigarettes and e-cigs are harmful. And then I wondered, Who are they quoting that would have the balls to make that claim? Nicotine alone is not addictive. Now, I've seen this everywhere, right? I showed you every label. Nicotine alone, they state, is an addictive drug. I mean, look, they don't say nicotine and other products in tobacco are addictive or other additives. Nicotine is addictive. 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 Who is claiming in 2015 that it's not addictive? Alone. All by itself. It's not addictive. All right. Do y'all believe heroin is addictive on its own? Do you believe cocaine's addictive on its own? Have you tried it? I mean, I'm in California. This is the Conscious Living Expo. I don't know what y'all have been consciously experimenting with. All right, so who said this? No, not me. These people did. I don't know about you. That's a pretty bold claim. Would you like to see what they actually said? These guys decided to do a test and find out, is nicotine, heroin, cocaine, and sugar all addictive, and which one's the most addictive in animal studies? All right, so this is their actual study. Would you like to see what it says? All right, so they gave all the animals nicotine, and not a single one of them wanted nicotine ever again. They could not make any animal for 6 months addicted to nicotine, nor want it ever again. So Harvard decided to actually file FOIA requests with the FDA to find out what the tobacco giants in their R&D papers did to make tobacco products addictive. Because they proved over 6 months nicotine is not addictive. Cocaine, heroin, and sugar were, but they couldn't get any animal to be addicted to nicotine whatsoever. All right, so this is what they published. I highlighted it. If you want to, talk to this guy about his study, this is his email, halpert@hsph.harvard.edu. A study of pyrazines in cigarettes and how additives might be used to enhance tobacco addiction. Nicotine is known as the drug that is responsible for the addicted behavior of tobacco users, but it has poor reinforcing effects when administered alone. Is that weird? Reinforcing means you want to do it again. They can't get people to do it. It has a very poor reinforcement alone. And read this. Pyrazines, this is in the conclusion, the highlights of the study. Pyrazines may help to optimize nicotine delivery and dosing and promote addiction through cueing, learned behavior, and or direct effects. Pyrazines. All right, now I'm just putting a mark here. Disclaimer, Harvard. Pyrazines and learned behavior. We're going to go into the paper. Pyrazine, stimulation of the olfactory receptors, your senses in your top of your nose that you smell, may enhance learned behavior either by acting alone, pyrazines alone, or in combination with other sensory modality stimuli. Pyrazines can reinforce smoking through associative learning and motivate increased desire or wanting or even unrestrained consumption. That's addiction. Unrestrained consumption. These are all of the pyrazine chemicals the FDA allows tobacco giants to put in their cigarettes and tobacco products. Look at all the pyrazines. Pyrazines, a class of chemosensory agents, comprise 15 of the 599 compounds on the list of cigarette ingredients. Did you know the FDA allows 600 chemicals to be added to tobacco products? Pyrazines is this list of that list and comprises 15 of the 600 chemicals. Provided by manufacturers to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in 94, 8 of those compounds in that 599 list on the additive ingredients provided by manufacturers in 2011, and it represents pyrazines, 10 of the compounds presently listed on cigarette manufacturers' website as cigarette ingredients. The sensory inputs of pyrazine flavor additives might also provide cues for reward-related learned behaviors and could play a critical role in the development, maintenance, and relapse of tobacco dependence. Substantial evidence exists to suggest that flavor ingredients are used in cigarette starter products, which increase cigarette experimentation and may help establish smoking behaviors that could lead to a lifetime of addiction. Not nicotine, pyrazines, which, by the way, do not appear in tobacco plants. This is the first report to document the tobacco industry's incorporation of pyrazine compounds into cigarettes since the early 1970s. This is 2015. No one has even looked at this since being first reported in the 70s. Oh, well, I was going to see. Hasn't been since early 1970s, which appear to contribute to the product's appeal and abuse potential. How many of you have heard that pyrazines are addictive and have seen that on billboards all around America? Since the 70s? No? Effects of pyrazines in cigarettes are described in industry documents, reflect a range of processes with which such non-nicotine constituents might increase tobacco product abuse potential in the tobacco giant's own documents. They put pyrazines in there with the intent to make you more addicted to it. This is what was in the FOIA documents. Several pyrazine derivatives have also been found to potentiate 5-HT binding to receptors in the nervous system, which results in enhanced dopamine release independently of nicotine. Do people get addicted to dopamine? Yeah. All right, their conclusions. Cigarette additives and ingredients with chemosimilar effects that promote addiction by acting synergistically with nicotine. They also discourage cessation or stopping or promoting relapse. These pyrazines, they state, Harvard, should be regulated by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. 2015. Harvard. Want to know how I know that nicotine is not addictive? Me personally, just common sense wise. Because right when I got up here, there's people out there chanting about the addiction of nicotine. That's fine. You want to know how I know it's not? And I did not know this until like 2 years ago. I had no idea. I just wanted to know. I believe that God created the earth. It doesn't matter what we believe. I believe somebody created all this stuff. It's not just happenstance, oversaw its production. And if nicotine was found in a plant that either Mother Earth designed to benefit all human life, what other plants is nicotine in? I couldn't believe it. So, what other plants, not tobacco, contain nicotine? Peppers. How many of you have eaten a bell pepper? Great. Cauliflower. Zucchini. Tomatoes. Every red tomato. Every eggplant. Every green tomato. In fact, green tomatoes have 10 times more nicotine than red tomatoes. I left this one for last because I couldn't believe it. Look at that. Did y'all know that? Did you know potatoes, white potatoes, have nicotine in them? Okay. If you did, it was probably in the last 2 years. Thanks for watching. My question is, raise your hand if you've ever eaten any of these. And now keep your hands up. I want to see it. How many of you ate cauliflower at a party? Tomato, potato, eggplant, bell pepper. And you woke up that night in the middle of the night with sweats of withdrawals. And keep your hands up if you've ever worked in a building and you heard an employer walk over to your boss and say, I really need a cauliflower break right now. Dude, I was at a crazy church function last night. They had tons of cauliflower. I don't know why I can't get over it. Nobody on planet Earth is addicted to zucchini, tomatoes, cauliflower. If you do something to this, you can probably make it really addictive. Eggplants. Nobody on Earth is addicted to eggplant. This is the second highest containing nicotine plant on Earth. How many of you have tried it once and never tried it again? Me. No part of me is like, oh, I need to eat more of that. Does anybody here love eggplant? I hate eggplant. And I've eaten it. You know what else I don't like? But I have to actually force myself to eat it because I do not like its texture. I do not like how it tastes. This thing. But I know it's really nutritious, so I eat them, but I actually resent every time I chomp down on one of those things. And then people go like this, well, if you don't like the big ones, try the cherry ones. Yeah, they're super concentrated with that same taste. We're going to give you 1,000 times more of it. Yeah, I definitely don't like those. Those are 10,000 times worse. But I eat them. All right, so these are some articles online. The surprising truth about nicotine in your food. Did you know that some of the foods you eat every day contain nicotine? Yes, the same addictive substance, catch that, that is found in cigarettes and tobacco products. But don't worry, you're not going to get hooked on tomatoes or potatoes anytime soon. Wait a minute, you just said it has this addictive chemical in there. Why are you not going to get hooked by it? If I put heroin in a tomato, do you think you'd be addicted? If I put cocaine in cauliflower, do you think you'd be addicted? If I made cauliflower pizza crust and told Oprah to put cocaine in it, do you think you'd be addicted to it? Yeah, you would. You would think. All right, so whatever this article is, 6 foods you may not have realized have nicotine in it. This first one, I didn't even know what that was. I'd look it up. Aubergine. I didn't know what it was. I was like, I speak English. I don't recognize this English word, but that's eggplant. Potatoes, teas, black and green teas, you know that had nicotine in it? Tomatoes, cauliflower, green peppers. This is a list of the amount of nicotine in all those plants. I find it handy because I've never been addicted to any of those ever. All right, how much nicotine is in a cigarette? A person absorbs 1 to 1.5 milligrams of nicotine from a cigarette stick. Medical News. Now look at this, Medical News Today, same company. Can dietary nicotine help fight Parkinson's disease? Do y'all know what that means? That means nicotine in plants that I just showed you. Can eating vegetables with nicotine help fight Parkinson's disease? Look at this. A number of studies suggest that dietary nicotine might have the ability to slow the progress of Parkinson's disease. Wow, I had no idea. All right, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such a time as the state. The lie can only be maintained as long as the state, the government, shields the people, doesn't show you, the political, economic, or military consequences of the lie. 20 years they've been telling you nicotine's addictive. What possible reasons would the state have to want to lie to us every single day for decades about nicotine being addictive when it is not? In fact, I'll tell you something right now. I have worn nicotine patches every day for 2 years, and there are some times when I travel for 3-day weekends where I will forget to put the patches in there. It'll be like day 2 or 3, then I'll think about it. Oh, where's my patches? Like, you don't think about it. Jane will go, this is my wife on the front row. She's been chewing nicotine gum every day for 2 years now, restored all of her COVID symptoms. She had long haulers, everything you think of, all of it gone in 3 days by chewing nicotine gum. She has chewed it every single day. Some days we'll be traveling or go to different states, and we'll have 3 or 4 days where we don't have it. We never even think about it till we get back. That's unfortunate, though, because it's super addictive, supposedly. But I've never, ever, ever gone like this. I'm starting to sweat. Why am I sweating? I'm getting jittery. I need that damn patch. It's never happened. The state, beginning in 1994, had to create a lie and had to repeat it every single day to shield all people from the looming political, economic, and military consequences of the lie. What was the lie? The state didn't tell you that they had big plans that would impact global politics, threaten global economies, and would have huge military consequences. They had to shield all people from knowing the plan. They also knew that this diabolical plan had one mortal enemy, nicotine. What was the plan? This was the plan. This was. The whole earth was their plan. The state. What was the state planning? Oh my God, this is the White House. COVID-19. The Biden-Harris plan to beat COVID. Joe Biden actually said in September 2020, this isn't about politics. It's about saving lives. All right, so what is the state planning? They actually write it, the plan. Plan for the effective, equitable distribution of treatments and vaccines, because development isn't enough if they aren't effectively distributed. Vaccines, great. All right, so what's the plan by the state? We're going to invest $25 billion in a vaccine manufacturing and distribution plan that will guarantee it gets to every American cost-free. And then ensure that politics plays no role in determining the safety and efficacy of any vaccine. What was the state planning? This. The whole plan was to inject the whole planet with something. But they had to scare you enough, had to make you sick enough and convinced you needed that vaccine. All right, so World Economic Forum even gets in on the action. What's their plan? March 2021. Here's how we, oh great, thanks World Economic Forum. Here's how we can vaccinate the whole world. Thanks. Even the Pope's in on it. Pope Francis, the world needs more vaccines and less war. Thank you, Pope Francis, October 2021. You know, as a man of the cloth, you would think people needed more Jesus. I thought they professed to believe that, Jesus is the great physician. Why is this guy yapping about vaccines? Is he a pharmaceutical rep? Yes. Is he a pharmacist? No. Does he have medical training? Not that I've ever heard. I have no idea. So why did the state lie to the whole world about nicotine and repeat the lie for decades before their global vaccine plan rollout? Their global vaccine plan rollout. Listen, when I say this, the whole goal, I am totally aware, the whole goal of COVID-19 was to get as many people in America to get the shot. And everybody. Okay, that was the whole goal. Regardless if I talk about hospital vaccines, snake venom, doesn't matter. The whole goal was to get you all convinced you needed a vaccine, period. This is why they had to lie to you. All right, this is May 2020, 5 months into the pandemic. The Economist reports smokers seem less likely than non-smokers to fall ill with COVID-19. Interesting. News Medical Life Sciences reports study shows lower SARS-CoV-2 infection rates in smokers. Wow, that's interesting. You know what's weird about this? Smokers supposedly have diseased lungs, and this was supposedly a what? Respiratory pathogen? They actually assumed before COVID ever really took off that hospitals would be full of smokers all around the world. 4 months later, they couldn't believe there weren't smokers in hospitals dying from COVID. Is there a smoker's paradox is reported in COVID-19? Paradox being they should be getting sick, but they're not. Although it is well established that cigarette smoking is associated with morbidity and mortality and several respiratory infections, data from recent studies suggest that active smokers are underrepresented among patients with COVID-19. This has led to claims that a smoker's paradox must exist in COVID-19, wherein smokers are protected from infection and severe complications of COVID-19. I would like to read all this to you, but you'll have it. Just notice that the FDA and the World Health Organization released statements warning that smoking may increase the risk and severity of COVID-19, when in fact that's not what was being reported. Although a protective effect of smoking in COVID-19 may seem counterintuitive, researchers have suggested several mechanisms by which this smoker's paradox may be possible. In this article, we aim to review currently available data regarding the relationship between smoking and COVID-19 and highlight possible biases in the available data and summarize proposed mechanisms of interaction between smoking and COVID-19. In their conclusion, further investigation into the interaction between smoking and COVID-19 is warranted for two main reasons. First, we need to assess the possibility of nicotine as a therapeutic option. This is December of 2021, by the way. All right, nicotine and tobacco research, 2023, smoking status, nicotine medication, vaccination, and COVID-19 hospital outcomes. This is in Wisconsin. I found this miraculous. In this study, they had a section of the hospital reserved for current smokers to be treated for COVID. So they went through the COVID-19 protocol, and the current smokers who couldn't leave the hospital to go smoke because now they're on a vent, they couldn't go smoke. And there was a lot of them that were dying as a result of the COVID-19 hospital protocol. In this study, these doctors were like, I wonder what happens if we put 21 milligram nicotine patches on all these guys. 100% of them went home by day 5. I'm still wondering why Pierre Corey hasn't talked about this yet. He's in Wisconsin. He should have known about this study. Introduction. Available evidence is mixed concerning associations between smoking status and COVID-19. There's mixed reviews. Yeah, they're going to publish the lie. Effects of nicotine replacement therapy, NRT, and vaccination status on COVID-19 outcomes in smokers are unknown. But look at this. These are the results. Among current smokers, nicotine replacement therapy prescription was associated with reduced mortality. Okay, what was the goal of going in the hospital? Was it to save your life? Supposedly? Isn't that why you go there? The outcome is to save your life, right? Everybody was working so hard. Medical doctors, this retired chiropractor, a whole bunch of us were just working nonstop, trying to keep people safe from dying, which should be the ultimate goal of the hospital. Don't you think if you saw decreased deaths in people using nicotine replacement therapy, don't you think you should go tell somebody? They did. They printed it in this article. Look at this. Conclusions. Former smokers, but not current smokers, hospitalized with COVID-19 are at higher risk for severe outcomes. You should read that slowly. Ready? Former smokers, meaning they quit before they got COVID, but not current smokers who are smoking and then get COVID at the same time, hospitalized with COVID-19 are at a higher risk for severe outcomes. Not the current smokers. Nicotine replacement therapy during COVID-19 hospitalization may reduce mortality for current smokers. Rocking. And then the Genetic Literacy Project publishes this. Smokers are less likely to get COVID. French researchers explore whether nicotine might prevent transmission. October 2021. Now I want to highlight this. These are French researchers exploring whether nicotine might prevent transmission of COVID. I want to show you what they found. You okay with this? It's one thing to quote it in the media. I like to go read the studies. Why? Because I don't believe the media. I'm like, wow, that's a bold statement that supports my PowerPoint. I want the data because they lie all the time in medical journals and in the media. All right, lower rate of daily smokers with symptomatic COVID-19. What? That's wild. Amongst inpatients in the hospital, daily smokers represented 2.2 and 3.4% of the 45 dead patients and of the 29 patients transferred to ICU respectively. The rate of daily smokers was significantly lower in patients with symptomatic COVID-19 as compared to that in the French general population after standardization by age and sex. So they looked at the entire population, who was all smoking, and the risks of them ever ending up in a hospital were better than almost any other demographic, only 2.2%. By the way, do y'all know what the percentage of people worldwide who died being treated for COVID, what condition they did have? That represented 40% of all deaths worldwide. Nope. Diabetes. 40% of all deaths from COVID are related to diabetics, not smokers. Here's the conclusion. Daily smoker rate in patients with symptomatic COVID-19 is lower as compared to the French general population. What did other French researchers discover about COVID-19 and nicotine a year before this? I like France. I like France for what they did during COVID. It's amazing. All right, so in April of 2020, that's 4 months into the pandemic, the same month that Boris Johnson in England is allowing military officials to go into nursing homes and literally kill 45,000 innocent elderly and senior citizens with morphine and midazolam, then told the chief coroner of the country to tell all coroners they will write down cause of death was COVID-19. And those 45,000 in March and April of 2020 is what was used by the England government to put into the media that 45,000 people died from COVID-19. Be scared, it's time to lock you down. There's only one, thank God, one coroner who was brave enough to say, I'm not doing that. And that was John O'Looney. And I've done many, many interviews and shows with him. Big time hero for England. All right. I don't know what y'all busy do the last 4 years. Do you know there was 2 lawsuits that landed on Boris Johnson's desk back-to-back days before the 3rd day when he resigned? And do you know my name's signed on as an expert witness on both of those? I mean, I don't know what y'all were doing. I was very busy. I did not like them killing innocent people and then interviewing all people, including John O'Looney and all kinds of attorneys that were looking at the data. It's just ridiculous. I can't stand people killing people and hurting them and lying to them. It's one thing about human beings to lie. Usually it's to preserve your own ego. That's one thing. But when your lie is going to result in physical harm to a human, I don't know why I have a line in the sand for that. Like, you can try to preserve your ego and look good and lie about stuff you've done in your life. That doesn't have any impact on me physically. But when you lie to people to inflict harm, I just have zero tolerance for that whatsoever. All right, so these are spike proteins. In April 2020, French researchers isolated the spike protein genes of COVID-19 virus and did DNA testing. Now, I made a statement earlier in the back. Somebody was asking about a medical doctor that's here, and I was like, make sure they're in the room. Because I don't understand. I've got 3 countries who did DNA testing in January of 2020, April of 2020, and in Italy, June of 2020. All of them sent samples to DNA labs, and all the results came back. Snake venom proteins, snake venom proteins, snake venom proteins are the spike proteins of COVID. I mean, seriously, is DNA testing only respected and trusted in court TV that we watch? We watch Forensic Files. We only trust DNA testing and DNA experts Is that it? It is absurd, the amount of people that have wanted to ignore this. Just because they want to be right, I guess? It's so weird. Like, the DNA testing is there. All right, here we go. This is that study, April 2020. This is significant for the other N word. This is a study, a nicotine hypothesis for COVID-19 with preventative and therapeutic applications. They ran the spike protein of COVID. It's right here, SARS-CoV-2. And this is what they found it was identical to. And this is the DNA stuff. You got cobra toxin, bungaro toxin, 3 pieces of the rabies virus. SARS-CoV-2 is identical to these things. Now, just to read this, the neurotoxin motifs, these are all genetic terms, not chiropractic or medical terms. These are genetic terms. I don't know about y'all, but medical doctors, guess who they have to rely on in court to come and testify to DNA evidence? It's not your attending physician. They're going to bring in a DNA expert to come in and say, this is legit. Why? Because they are geneticists. They deal with genes, DNA. When you got a common cold going to your primary care physician, they aren't DNA experts. That's okay. I'm not either. I'm a chiropractor. It's okay. I'm not a surgeon either, and I wouldn't pretend to be either. I would listen to them. Amino acid sequence alignment of the motifs, these motifs, found in toxins from snakes of the cobra and the bungarus genre. Do y'all know what those are? Okay, cobra. This is a king cobra. This is a king cobra. Cobra toxin. Let's see if I'll put this together. This came from this. This is found in the venom of this, and now somehow it's in COVID-19 patients. Then they also said they found venom from this guy. He's called a bungarus, the red-headed crate snake, bungarus genre. Their venom's called bungaro toxin. I don't know about y'all, I like DNA. It's kind of fun. If somebody raped my daughter, I'm not going to listen to an MD tell me they just think it's somebody else. No, I want the DNA. I want somebody to do the DNA because I saw on Forensic Files, and I watched Montel Williams for years. He could actually tell people who was the father and was not the father. You know what I kept waiting for? I want the mother one. Do the mother one. You are the mother. Wouldn't that be amazing if some woman's on there like, I don't really know if I gave birth to this one or not. Can you tell me? All right. I need to read this to you because this is April of 2020 and we're 4 years later. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 4. 4 years. These guys must be going out of their mind. Nicotine may be suggested as a potential preventative agent against COVID-19 infection. Wow. Both the epidemiological and the clinical evidence and the in silico findings may suggest that COVID-19 infection is a nicotine receptor disease that could be prevented and may be controlled by nicotine. Nicotine would then compete with the SARS-CoV-2 binding of the spike proteins of COVID at the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. In this paper, DNA experts said these are 2 neurotoxic venoms from 2 snakes, are the S1, S2 spike proteins on COVID. And then they said this. The interesting thing about these 2 venoms is they very easily cross the blood-brain barrier and bind to these nicotine receptors in your brainstem that paralyze your heart and diaphragm's ability to contract. And just a little will suppress your diaphragm's ability to draw in air, and you'll become hypoxic and develop respiratory arrest-looking symptoms. When a snake bites its prey, it's going to paralyze its diaphragm so it can't breathe and it can't slide away, can't get away. It's going to pass out. He's going to walk over and swallow it. You know, so they just bite and then let go. Those animals try to get away and they can't breathe. You know how many people in this world can't still walk upstairs without stopping to catch their breath? They said in here, just so you know, these venom proteins are specific. They do not target ACE2 receptors. And in fact, in this paper, they actually show a study done in the same year, 2020. They actually did an analysis of where all ACE2 receptors are in the body. There aren't any in the lungs on the cells of your lungs. And they said there's no way that this is getting into your lung tissue through breathing it in. There's no ACE2 receptors on the outside of your lung cells to bring it in. And they linked the research study, open it, look at the diagram. Every other organ in your body has them but your lungs. They said this is not a respiratory disease. This is a central nervous system disease. These are neurotoxins that target the brainstem. And it looks like a respiratory virus illness. How many times have you watched Forensic Files or watched Dateline and you see somebody is poisoning a spouse with arsenic a little bit every single day, and then they die eventually, and they're giving some cause of death, pneumonia, heart disease, something. Years go by, and then it comes out, right? Somebody comes up as a witness and goes, the wife whispered to me at a diner that she poisoned him with arsenic. Then they go exhume the body and do what? Arsenic testing. That's not what was on the death certificate originally. So then they change it to homicide, arsenic poisoning. Oh my God, that's okay. Just because somebody said it doesn't mean it's always true. Can be true, but not always. This is why it's important. It says this legitimates the use of nicotine as a protective agent against SARS-CoV-2 infection and the subsequent deficit it causes in the central nervous system. Thus, in order to prevent the infection and the retropropagation of the virus through the central nervous system, we plan a therapeutic test against COVID-19 with nicotine and other nicotine agents, patches, or other delivery methods like sniffing, chewing, in hospitalized patients and in the general population. In conclusion, they say, we propose and try to justify the hypothesis that nicotine receptors play a critical role in the disease process of SARS-CoV-2 infection, and as a consequence, we propose nicotine and nicotine agents as possible therapy for SARS-CoV-2 infection. Look at this next statement. All the MDs should love this one. Interestingly, ivermectin, which has been recently shown to inhibit the replication of SARS-CoV-2 in cells in vitro, is a positive allosteric modulator of alpha-7 nicotine receptors, which means ivermectin binds to the same receptors nicotine does, and this is why it's working. This is April of 2020. Do you know there's been whole books written about ivermectin and how it works against COVID, and they never talk about this? It's never even mentioned. Even in the last year, there's been books released about ivermectin. That is not how it worked. These French DNA experts said this is why it's working. Ivermectin also binds to the same cell receptors that nicotine does. But in this paper, they say it doesn't bind as powerfully as nicotine. Nicotine has a 30 times more powerful binding to these receptors than ivermectin does. And I cannot tell you how many people have been on ivermectin for a year. I'm not kidding. A whole year for long hauler COVID. Then they tried nicotine gum or nicotine patches. And within hours, all their symptoms clear up. It's not that ivermectin wasn't good. I loved it. I talked about it all the time. I've been using it in my home for 12 years, 13 years now, every month. Do you or anyone you know still suffer from any of these symptoms? Do you know they have a list of 21 symptoms they call long hauler COVID symptoms? That's the list. So if you look at the list, you know anybody still struggling with these since they had a mild case of COVID? This is called long hauler COVID syndrome or post-COVID syndrome. This is the list. This is 2024. This is February? A year ago, January. A year ago, 2023. This paper is released. January 2023, a study was published by Marco Letsky et al., which highlights 4 case studies of long hauler COVID patients and their miraculous recovery in just 6 days of using 7 milligram nicotine patches. Now, in order to enroll in this study, you had to have your long hauler COVID symptoms for at least a year and a half with nothing working. Those were the 4 selected, where people had a list of all those symptoms for almost 2 years. This is the study right there. Conclusion of the study, I quote, treating several individuals suffering from post-COVID-19 syndrome with a nicotine patch application, we witnessed improvements ranging from immediate and substantial to complete remission in a matter of days. This is the study, is the post-COVID-19 syndrome, otherwise known as long hauler syndrome. Post means after, the after COVID-19 syndrome. It's a severe impairment of acetylcholine. This is actually a neurostimulating chemical in your body. Orchestrated neuromodulation that responds to nicotine administration. Is long hauler COVID a problem with these receptors that acetylcholine goes through, and is it cured with nicotine application? That's the question. All right, so this is the 4 cases with all those problems, okay? They had them for 4 days prior to taking nicotine. You'll see the nicotine patch up here. They took it for 6 days only. A 7 milligram nicotine patch. The red is the only period they took it. For the first 4 days, they were told to actually chart all of their symptoms and their severity on a scale of 0 to 8. So they're doing that for 4 days, and they start nicotine on day 1 here, right? 6 days. Now I want you to watch what happens. They only wore it for 6 days and took it off. I want you to look. By day 16, all of the symptoms were gone. They only wore it for 6 days. The nicotine in their body kept actually releasing these spike proteins causing COVID symptoms by day 16. And look at the list. Chest pain, diarrhea, ageusia, loss of taste and smell, and dizziness. All gone. 6 days of nicotine. Case 2, female, 31 years old, has all these problems. Chronic fatigue, headache, anosmia, loss of smell, taste, chest tightness and pain, exercise intolerance, memory lapses, concentration difficulties. How about the brain fog with COVID? You heard anybody complain of that? All right, so they chart this, all their symptoms, and then they put on the patch, and you'll see there was like this wave of increase, decrease in their symptoms. They stopped it on day 6. By day 23 was the very last symptom to disappear. But look at these two. Day 1, all of it gone. Or sorry, day 4, these 2 symptoms gone, which were memory lapses and loss of smell. Or taste, sorry. This guy is a male. How many of you have heard dumb male jokes? Dumb men. This guy is told repeatedly, you've signed up to do this research study, you're only going to wear a 7 milligram nicotine patch for 6 days only. And the man, being dumb, goes like this. Well, if 7's good, 14's better. So he took 14 milligrams and started throwing up. He called the people the next day and said, I'm not doing this anymore. And they said, well, will you please just track your symptoms for us still? Of course. He only wore 14 milligrams worth of nicotine patch 1 day. He did what the researchers told him not to, because he's a man. Men don't read directions or listen to them. They just make up their own. Nicotine patch for 1 day. All these symptoms he charted. But I want you to notice something. He only wore it 1 day. By day 15, all of his symptoms were gone. He struggled with these symptoms for a year and a half. He only wore patches for 1 day. Case 4, male, 52 years, who kind of listens to the instructions. He does half for 3 days. Then he does the whole patch for 3 days. I want you to notice all of his symptoms: concentration difficulties, sleep difficulties, heart palpitations, chest tightness and pain, dyspnea, can't take a deep breath, chronic fatigue, and mood disorders. All of them are gone by day 6. He was struggling with these for 2 years almost. In each case, this is straight out of their study, in each case, signs of exhaustion such as fatigue, weakness, breathlessness, and exercise intolerance are improved rapidly and across the board following nicotine exposure. At the very latest, by day 6, all of those symptoms were gone. In cases with impairment of loss of the senses of taste and smell, improvement was observed over a longer period with complete restoration of these senses over anywhere from 13 to 16 days. Isn't that miraculous? Will I become addicted to nicotine patches? Everybody worries about that one. Why? Why does everybody think that's going to happen? The study authors address concerns of addiction to the nicotine patches, and they publish transcutaneous, that means through the skin, a sticker, a patch, administration of nicotine ensures constant blood levels without relevant peak levels. The patch is designed to deliver nicotine over a 24-hour period slowly. That is different than the gum. Some people get nauseated and get pukey if they chew the gum. All I do is tell them to stop chewing the gum and put on a patch. A gum, you're going to get all the nicotine in like 5 seconds. Bite it, it's all in you. The patch, it's 24 hours slow release, okay? Thus, we did not see any development of nicotine dependency. Oh, wait, I thought it was addictive. In the context of nicotine patch therapy, from the author's point of view, this is not to be expected. Interesting. Well, I've been doing it for 2 years now, and I'm still not addicted. Conclusions. Based on the results of this case study, this treatment option using nicotine patches to combat long hauler COVID seems far superior to the time-consuming, often underwhelming or disappointing, costly and complex rehab measures currently available to these patients. worldwide. Does it say slightly better than the alternative treatments? Far superior is the quote. Oh, these are the people actually doing the research. Any medical doctor out there telling you not to use nicotine patches and don't listen to Dr. Ardis, they obviously haven't asked their patients to be on nicotine yet. Because it's miraculous, the stories I hear from around the world. It's incredible. I did not want to know this information. I was just fine telling you not to go to the hospital and not trust run death is near. I was totally fine. I just wanted to go home. Ask your doctor if 7 milligram nicotine patches are right for you. Of the two, nicotine patch, Rugby's, that's what I wear. Nicoderm, I actually wore that for a little while before I found this brand. This one just happens to have chemicals that people with latex sensitivity, they don't have any reactions. Sometimes with the other brands they do, but Rugby is a much cleaner patch. If tobacco products contain nicotine, and if nicotine found in tobacco products is known to be an antidote for the state plan and future COVID-19 pandemic, and the major consequence of the plan is to vaccinate the whole world for COVID-19, the state would need to cover or shield the whole world from the curing power of nicotine. Do y'all believe COVID-19 was planned? Do you believe it was planned for longer than a week? How long do you think they were planning this for? If you read some books and references to the Club of Rome, they've been planning this since 1960. All right, so remember, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state shields its people from the political, economic, and or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent. I am the dissent. All they have to do is suppress me. Because I'm the only one screaming it with the top of my lungs. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. Isn't that amazing? I love this statement. This guy was a great psychopath. He really got it. He knew how to be bad. It thus becomes, and I want to put this in red, it is vital and important for the state to use all of its power to repress dissent. The truth cannot get out. I just showed you 4 years ago, French researchers were like, hey, do you know the last statements in that paper were when they found the spike proteins of COVID were 2 snake venom proteins and nicotine fixed it all? This is what they said. We plead with all governments around the world to fund nicotine agent studies to stop COVID and end the pandemic. Not a single government did. In fact, a week later is when you first started hearing Anthony Fauci coming into the media saying smokers are at highest risk for COVID. There's no better time than now to quit, America. All right, the truth is the moral enemy of the lie. The truth is the greatest enemy of the state. So let's see what the state did. Once the French scientists blew the whistle with their DNA testing. All right, News Medical Life Sciences. Smokers need to quit during coronavirus pandemic. This is April of 2020. When was the French study? April 2020. All right, NIH paper. Smoking associated with increased risk of severe COVID-19 outcomes. 2022, ABC News. Smoking, vaping increases risk of death from COVID, study finds. Is this what the scientists found? Is this what the University of Wisconsin found in their own hospital? No. Young smokers at high risk for severe COVID-19 symptoms that non-smokers their age, more than non-smokers their age. Okay, so this is a lie. This is the Seattle Times. Thank you, Seattle. They need to go back to Starbucks, get some coffee, so they can focus. USA Today, people who smoke are prioritized to get the COVID-19 vaccine before the general population. This is February 2021. NBC News, coronavirus may be worse for smokers and vapors, and youth won't save you. Thanks. World Health Organization gets in the mix. Who supports people quitting tobacco to reduce the risk of severe COVID-19? Thanks, people. I love this. When you click the article, this isn't the title, but this is the link on Google. This is NPR. This is better titled than what you see on the actual article. Coronavirus epidemic gives smokers another scary reason to quit. Shots. Health News. Scary? Okay, all the smokers were not scared. This is 2 weeks after the French paper was published in France. If you tell a lie big enough, keep repeating it, people eventually come to believe it. This is the CDC. I want to show you something. In 1990, an estimated 89 million American adults were smoking. That's half of America. 1990. What does the CDC say now? As of 2021, 11.5%. So in 30 years, they were able to reduce the trust and faith in tobacco products in the American populace, which is great because they have pyrazines in them and 599 other chemicals in them. But 40% less adults were smoking 30 years later, just in time. From 1990 to 2021, U.S. smoking plummets from 50% of American adults to 11%. That would mean that 90% of American adults by 2020 were ripe for them to be susceptible to getting sick from their planned pandemic, because 90% of Americans were not using nicotine-containing tobacco products. When 90% of Americans are now susceptible to getting sick during the planned pandemic, then and only then can the state's planned consequence, which was to vaccinate the whole world, would then be much easier to promote and sell to the masses. Why? Because you're all coughing. And you got this little device on the end of your finger you never wore before. That your oxygen just keeps going down. It's called hypoxia, caused by every snake venom on earth. Want to see some other truths about nicotine that the state had to shield you from? This is the part I'm really excited about. I mean, DNA testing's cool. Supposedly you're supposed to rely on it. But the chiropractor can't read it or interpret it, supposedly. But I know English. Here we go. I have to show you. This is awesome. This is the most exciting part. Let me show you. PubMed. Now, I'm going to take you through this because Goebel said that the state has to shield you and its people from the lie so that you don't know the economic, the money, the political, or the military consequences of the lie. So what additional reasons or truths would that statement being repeated and lied to you, what else are they shielding you from? That's what I'm about to show you. They got everybody scared of nicotine. This is 2021, molecular insights into the benefits of nicotine on memory and cognition. This is a peer-reviewed, approved, published paper. All right, abstract. The health risks of nicotine are well known, but there is some evidence of its beneficial effects on cognitive function. Nicotine administration can improve cognitive impairment in Alzheimer's disease. Did you know that? And dyskinesia, which is the motor functioning issues with Parkinson's, and memory impairment in Parkinson's disease. Did y'all know nicotine does that? Did you know that they've done studies on Parkinson's and have found that identical twins, if one of them smokes, they don't get Parkinson's. It's the non-smoker that always gets Parkinson's. Isn't that interesting? I found that interesting because supposedly it's genetic. Supposedly. It's another great lie, by the way. In terms of its mechanism of action, nicotine slows the production of PD. Anybody want to tell me what PD stands for on this reference? Parkinson's disease. By inhibiting sirtuin 6, a stress-responsive protein deacetylase, whatever that is, thereby decreasing neuronal apoptosis and improving neuron survival, brain cell survival. Nicotine does that. In Alzheimer's disease, nicotine improves cognitive impairment. Did you know that? Anybody in here know anybody had Alzheimer's or has Alzheimer's? Anybody have any demented older parents or loved ones? Has their MD ever prescribed nicotine to them? Isn't that weird? Nicotine may also activate thyroid receptor signaling pathways to improve memory impairment caused by hypothyroidism. Okay. Do you know how much Synthroid's being sold and levothyroxine's being sold? How many people told you could use nicotine? In healthy individuals, nicotine improves memory impairment caused by sleep deprivation. Furthermore, nicotine may improve memory function through its effect on chromatin modification via the inhibition of histone, which causes transcriptional changes. The only reason why I highlighted this is this. It inhibits, nicotine does, these things that actually impacts memory-related genes. So if you have genetics inside of you that are going to cause you to inherit dementia, nicotine overrides those memory genes you inherited. Yet you've all been told that it's genetic. Like everything you've ever had is genetic. I coughed today, Doc. Why is that? Has your mom ever coughed? Almost everything's blamed on your parents. It's ridiculous. Finally, nicotine administration has been demonstrated to rescue long-term potentiation in individuals with sleep deprivation, Alzheimer's disease, chronic stress, and hypothyroidism, primarily by desensitizing alpha-7 nicotine receptors, the same one that venoms target in COVID. To conclude, nicotine has several cognitive benefits in healthy individuals as well as in those with cognitive dysfunction associated with various diseases. And this is 2017. Nicotine reverses hypofrontality, part of your brain, in animal models of addiction and schizophrenia. Chronic, not short term, not 6 days, chronic nicotine administration reversed this hypofrontality, suggesting that administration of nicotine may represent a therapeutic strategy for the treatment of schizophrenia and a physiological basis for the tendency of patients with schizophrenia to self-medicate by smoking. They notice that a lot of schizophrenics are just drawn to smoke, and they believe they're self-treating. PubMed again, 2018, nicotine self-administration reverses cognitive deficits in rat models for schizophrenia. The word is reverses. This word is self-administration. They discuss in all of these, they can create a schizophrenic animal, an Alzheimer's animal, a Parkinson's animal. Just so you know, if they can do that in mammals, they know they can do it to you. Every study with animals, they publish, the reason why they study chemicals and drugs in animals first is because mammals have every gene you do. And they actually publish, when we put a chemical in a mammal who has the same genes as a human, their same disease processes will occur in a human. This is why we study them in humans. But what you'll hear your MDs tell you is, oh, that was in an animal study, not human. No. The scientists doing the studies know why they're doing it. They didn't give you Lipitor for high cholesterol without testing animals first. They just put it in animals, and they saw that when they give Lipitor to rats, mice, ferrets, look, their cholesterol goes down. They knew they could then give it to you and it would work. There was no doubt it wasn't going to work. So when you look at these studies, do not think these apply to animals only. They're studying How many of you know that mammals have every organ you do? Do you know that? You know every mammal has lungs, heart, spleens, in like the same place, just about. Every whale has the exact same organs you do, all of them. These animals actually chose nicotine water, which is not addictive, to reverse their own schizophrenic induced symptoms. Nicotine, but not saline self-administration, significantly ameliorated or resolved the cognitive deficits induced by Miami. That's not Miami. This is actually maternal immune activation. Nicotine after self-administration, remember, the animals did this themselves, chose nicotine. The MI-induced cognitive deficits significantly improved. These data lend support for the self-medication hypothesis of schizophrenia with nicotine. Nicotine ameliorates schizophrenia-like cognitive deficits. This is 2016. If y'all have a loved one with schizophrenia, I think you are learning what you should try. Maternal exposure to infectious agents is a predisposing factor for schizophrenia with associated cognitive deficits in offspring. Repeated nicotine treatment led to global and selective improvements in performance. Nicotine reversed the LPS-induced deficits in selective attention and induced a global enhancement of sensory motor gating. Being able to walk, work, everything was restored with nicotine. Nicotine promotes neural survival and partially protects from Parkinson's disease. Anybody in here have a loved one with Parkinson's? Have they been recommended nicotine by their medical doctor? Why are there all these studies and MDs aren't reading them? Parkinson's disease is characterized by progressive death of dopaminergic neurons leading to motor and cognitive dysfunction. Epidemiological studies consistently show that the use of tobacco reduces the risk of Parkinson's. How many of you knew that? Is this shocking to any of you? We report that nicotine reduces the abundance of this substance in neuronal culture and brain tissue. We find the reduction of that substance is partially responsible for neuroprotection, brain protection, afforded by nicotine. I didn't know nicotine protected the brain. Additionally, this substance abundance is greater in Parkinson's patients brains and decreased in the brains of tobacco users. That's funny. Decreased in the brains of tobacco users. Our data suggests that this chemical plays a pathogenic and pro-inflammatory role in Parkinson's and that nicotine can provide neuroprotection by accelerating the degradation, the teardown of this chemical that isn't found in tobacco smokers. PubMed, nicotine, 2013, might have a protective effect in the etiology, the disease process, and cause of multiple sclerosis. The use of moist snuff is common in Sweden and leads to exposure to high doses of nicotine. Recent studies indicate that exposure to nicotine could modulate immune responses. The aim of this study was to investigate the influence of snuff use on the risk of developing MS, taking smoking habits into consideration. Y'all have got to read this. If anybody ever came to me, man, my loved one's struggling with MS, what would you recommend? No one on the planet is going to tell you nicotine, but me. Maybe after this presentation you will. Okay, they're studying snuff people that just put stuff in their lip. Snuff takers have a decreased risk of developing MS compared with those who have never used moist snuff. And we found clear evidence, not muddy evidence, clear evidence of a dose response, the higher the nicotine, correlation between cumulative dose of snuff use and the risk of developing the disease. Watch this. We further observed that subjects who combined smoking and snuff use had a significantly lower risk for developing MS than smokers who had never used moist snuff. We're going to study you for snuff. Yeah, but I've been smoking cigarettes too. Wait a minute. That group of people who were smoking and snuffing had better results. Our results add evidence to the hypothesis that nicotine exerts anti-inflammatory and immune modulating effects in a way that might decrease the risk of developing MS. Who have you ever heard? Have you heard a commercial yet? An apple a day keeps the doctor away, and the very next statement was, and nicotine keeps MS away. You ever heard that? Never. Why not? These scientists are figuring it out with all these names. Check this out. So 2022, nicotine inflammatory diseases, anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory effects. According to the data analysis from recent studies in the past 20 years, nicotine exerts much more anti-inflammatory effects than pro-inflammatory ones. That means it turns off inflammation more than it creates it, especially in ulcerative colitis, arthritis, sepsis, and endotoxemia. I have to be honest, I need an MD in the room to tell me what this means. I didn't look it up. Doesn't have to be an MD, it can be anybody. All right, 2015, reduction of aggressive episodes after repeated nicotine patches administered in hospitalized adolescent with autism. Now, this is just one case study. I'm not done with this topic. There's a person they could not get under control who's an autism spectrum disorder patient, adolescent. They couldn't get him under control physically. Aggression remains a major cause of morbidity in patients with autism. Current pharmacotherapy for aggression is not always effective and is often associated with morbidity, death. Nicotine receptors may play a prominent role in autism spectrum disorder. The disease process, based on human and animal studies and preclinical studies, show nicotine administration can reduce aggression-related behaviors. Transdermal nicotine has been used to treat agitation in neuropsychiatric conditions with cholinergic dysfunction. Here we report the use of nicotine patches as an adjunctive medication to treat aggression in a hospitalized adolescent with autism. Nicotine patch was recurrently well tolerated and reduced the need for emergency medication and restraint. These findings suggest further study of transdermal nicotine for aggression comorbid with ASD autism is warranted. We need more studies here because it worked on this one kid. I don't even know how they got to this, but I think it's awesome. They mentioned this other conditions they've seen referenced before in the past. So here's the study. The study's awesome. An exploratory trial of nicotine patches for aggression and irritability in adults with autism. This is in 2018. We explored the feasibility, tolerability, and preliminary efficacy of targeting nicotine receptors using nicotine patches to reduce aggressive symptoms in adults. This is what the effort of this research study is. 8 subjects were randomized in a double-blind crossover trial of 7 milligrams, just like the COVID study, nicotine patch, or placebo, each of them for 1 week. All participants tolerated nicotine treatment as well, or well. Aberrant behavior checklist irritability. Anybody who deals with autism kids will know these scales and tests to determine their aggressiveness. Subscale change from baseline, which was improved. Their behavior was improved by nicotine compared to placebo. Sleep ratings were also improved by nicotine and correlated with whatever that improvement is. These findings support further investigation of nicotine agonist, which nicotine is, for aggression and sleep in autism patients. Look at this. This is I have a date on here. 2002, nicotine reduces the incidence of type 1 diabetes in mice. How many of you know anybody with diabetes, type 1? You ever heard an endocrinologist say, hey, maybe you should try a nicotine patch? Nicotine has been previously shown to have immunosuppressive actions. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease resulting from the specific destruction of the insulin-producing pancreatic B cells. Just so you know, this is actually a false statement. It does not do that, actually. Nicotine does not cause immunosuppressive actions, and I can prove it by showing you. Thus, we hypothesize that nicotine may exert protective effects against type 1 diabetes. Have you ever heard that if you just had nicotine every day, that might reduce your risk of any diabetes? Nicotine treatment reduced the high blood sugar and incidence of disease in both these group mouse models of diabetes. Nicotine also protected against the diabetes-induced decrease in pancreatic insulin content observed in both animal models. Nicotine treatment reduces the incidence of type 1 diabetes in 2 animal models by changing the profile of pancreatic cytokine expression from Th1 to Th2. Any of you scientists will know what that means. Did you know nicotine can dissolve brain tumors in just hours? Any of you ever heard of a glioblastoma? I'm going to show you how they actually dissolved one in 72 hours with nicotine. How many oncologists do you know are intravenously selecting nicotine as their anti-cancer therapy? Not one. Do you remember when I said Goebbels' statement, right? As long as the state can maintain the lie and shield you from the economic, political, and military consequences of the lie. All right, this is actually during COVID. While y'all were locked down at home, they're doing this study. They took cone snail venoms, of which Carlo Brogna did DNA testing in Italy and found 15 cone snail venoms in only COVID patients. These are in the ocean on the floor. How did their venom get in the blood and feces of all COVID-19 positive patients? And cobra toxin, the spike protein of COVID. They took conotoxins found in COVID-19 patients. They found the DNA-confirmed spike protein called cobra toxin promotes, while lipoxygenase and cyclooxygenation inhibitors suppress the proliferation of glioma 6 cells. Inside the base of your brainstem, is this area called glial cells, or a type of cell. Have you heard of glioblastomas? This is that area. And those cells where you have excess proliferation, means excess growth to create a tumor. It's these cells that are all just growing at super fast rates that are uncontrollable. You heard of turbo cancers? This study, they took these 2 venoms and injected them into animals. And within 72 hours, they could grow a brain tumor called a glioblastoma. 72 hours. The animals didn't have one. These venoms do that. Why do you think during COVID you're locked down and they're studying the same venoms they're finding in COVID-19 patients with DNA testing? Why would they be looking to see what it does in all these mammals while you're locked down at home? Among the brain tumors, glioma is the most common. In general, different biochemical mechanisms involving nicotine receptors and the arachidonic acid cascade are involved in oncogenesis. Now, I hate big words that aren't defined, so I'm going to handle this for you. Among the brain tumors, glioma is the most common. Glioma is the most common. Let's give you a definition. What is glioma? Glioma is a common type of tumor originating in the brain, and about 33% of all brain tumors are gliomas, a third. The next word is oncogenesis. What they're telling you is the nicotine receptors are involved in the development of a tumor. Oncogenesis means the formation and development of tumors. You follow me? So these are the most common brain tumors. And we believe these nicotine receptors play a role in the development of a glioblastoma. I just want to make y'all aware, since the COVID-19 vaccines have gone out, turbo cancers, brain cancer, glioblastoma. Here's a 21-year-old at the University of Georgia who died, literally within a month of being diagnosed with a glioblastoma. This is not normal. In this work, we studied the effect of nicotine antagonists. Antagonists are things that shut off cell receptors' function. So they bind to a cell and tell it to stop working. So for example, have you ever done a presentation and somebody came up and was like, or you said something, someone came up and said just the opposite? That person is being antagonistic to you. Got it? It's doing the opposite. So if a cell in your tongue is supposed to taste, hey, is that tea for me? Oh, I'm done. Hey, look at there. I'm all done? Holy cow, I've got like 4 hours left. Watch this. Hold it.
You're live.
Wow. I'm actually at 266 slides. I did pretty good. Okay. That's pretty fast, right? All right, so can I show you what they found with nicotine? Okay, so they actually injected conotoxins and snake cobra toxin, and they want to know what happens to these cells. That's a cone snail. That's the cobra toxin. And they're looking to see, does it proliferate these glioma cells, grow faster than normal, to grow rapid, turbo cancers, faster than normal. While nicotine, and then they say this in the summary. Are you okay if I just wrap this up with this? Here you go, I'll give it to you. It was found that cone snail venoms and cobra toxins promoted the excessive growth of these glioma cells, while nicotine had practically no effect at concentrations below this amount. Wait, hold up. It says they studied these two venoms, and it caused the growth of these cells, a tumor, and then they say, this is the summary. This means summary of the study. While nicotine had practically no effect at concentrations below 1 microliter per milliliter. So in the summary of this paper, I just want you to know, you will not find nicotine anywhere else in here mentioned, except for maybe down here somewhere. No, nowhere else, okay? When I read this, I was like, oh my God, they're lying. No way on earth did a researcher go, let's try this amount of nicotine and not try another dose. But in the summary that your MDs are going to read, they only usually read the abstract because they're so busy. I love the whole study because I know they're going to leave crap out of here. There is nothing in here about nicotine working to reverse these tumors anywhere in the summary. So if anybody reads this, they're going to pass right over and go, nicotine didn't do anything. There's nothing in the summary to make you go read it. The moment I read this, I was like, oh my God, they're lying. So I need to go see what they did. In many types of cancer, well, I got to fly through this. Sorry. All right, there are 3 types of gliomas. Astrocytomas is the most common, represents nearly half of all primary brain tumors are astrocytomas. We tested the effects of nicotine, which is a nicotine agonist, turns on the cells. At concentrations of this amount below 0.1 microliter, nicotine exerted no effect on the excessive growth activity of these cells. This amount of nicotine did nothing. That's what they said in the summary. Check this out. Despite these changes, we investigated the effect of nicotine at a different concentration, 1 microliter per milliliter, on the accelerated turbo cancer growth and the viability of those cells. At this nicotine concentration, inhibition, stopping of the growth was observed, which after 72 hours led to a decrease in the number of cells by more than 2 times, by half. Do you want to see? So they injected these 2 venoms that were found in all COVID patients. 24 hours, these are the cells. This is the cells accumulating. There's more of them. This is after 3 days, 72 hours. Okay? Then they were just testing 2 different amounts of nicotine. When they did the higher dose of nicotine, this is what happened after 24 hours. Is there less cells in there? Yeah, there is. Is there less cells here than there? You want to see it 72 hours? This is the tumor, excessive growth. Look at that. Nicotine added at a concentration of 1 microliter. This is in 72 hours, 3 days. They actually canceled the study at the end of 72 hours. Do you want to know why I think they did that? All right. So that's that study. Well, keep going.
Thank you.
Real quick, watch this. Hold it. I got to show you real quick. Did you know that they cure myocarditis in 14 days with just nicotine? Ask Peter McCullough if nicotine is right for you. Dose-dependent protective effect of nicotine in a mouse study of viral myocarditis. How many of you know this was called viral myocarditis? Nicotine was administered at these doses 3 times a day for 14 days. The effects of nicotine on survival, myocardial changes, cardiac function, and cytokine levels were studied. The survival date on day 14 increased in a dose-dependent manner of nicotine fashion and was markedly higher in the higher 2 doses of nicotine than in the infected, untreated group. Treatment with high-dose nicotine reduced the myocardial inflammation and improved the impaired left ventricle function in infected mice. How many of you knew that your ventricles in your heart would work better with nicotine? Ejection fraction was improved. The mRNA damage to the heart was all reversed with nicotine. Isn't that amazing? All right, I'm Dr. Ardis. Let me go real quick here to the very end. Where's the end?
QR code. Give us the QR. Yes.
Oh, that's really
Give him
long.
a big hand.
There you go.
Dr. Ardis, give him a
Scan
big
that.
hand.
And that'll take you there. All right, I'm Dr. Ardis. God bless you. Download the thing because there's like